In the subway, my son-in-law and daughter pushed me onto the tracks, right in front of the train. I lay between the tracks, hearing the subway train roar at 50 miles per hour, while they stood and smiled, waiting for my demise. The betrayal by my loved ones tore my heart apart, but when the train passed, I calmly got up, dusted off my clothes, and whispered 4 words that turned their lives into an eternal nightmare. Before we continue, please subscribe to the channel and write in the comments what time it is where you are now. The elevator doors slid open on the 12th floor, and I heard voices before I saw anyone. The insurance meeting had wrapped up faster than expected. Carmichael signed without the usual haggling, so I'd returned to the office 90 minutes early on that Tuesday afternoon in January. My good mood dissolved the moment I recognized my son-in-law's voice, drifting from the half-open conference room door. How much longer do we wait? He's 62. This could drag on another decade. I stopped mid-stride. The leather portfolio under my arm suddenly felt heavy. He built this place. You know he'll never voluntarily step aside. That was Catherine, my daughter. Her voice carried that clipped impatience she'd inherited from her mother. I stepped back into the elevator alcove, hidden from view but close enough to hear Wesley's response. Then we need to accelerate the timeline. There are legal options. The conference room door swung partially closed, muffling the rest. I caught fragments. Make sure everything transfers smoothly when... The words hit like cold water. 30 seconds passed. I counted them, forcing my breathing to stay even. Then I walked toward the conference room with deliberate footsteps, leather soles announcing my presence against the polished floor. When I entered, Wesley and Catherine jerked their heads toward me. Wesley's hand moved quickly, sliding a stack of legal documents into a folder. Working late? I thought you'd both left for the day. I kept my voice casual, conversational. Wesley recovered smoothly. Just reviewing Q4 projections, some concerning trends. Anything requiring my immediate attention? Nothing urgent. We'll discuss at Thursday's meeting. I nodded, noting how Catherine wouldn't meet my eyes. The manila folder sat between them like evidence at a crime scene. Whatever I'd interrupted, they both knew I'd heard something, and we all pretended otherwise. 2 hours later, I sat across from Wesley in the executive dining room on the 15th floor. The January sun slanted through floor-to-ceiling windows, harsh and cold. Catherine had joined us, picking at her salad, while Wesley launched into what he probably thought was a careful pitch. The industry's changing fast. Younger leadership brings fresh perspective. I cut my steak methodically, keeping my hands steady. I've adapted to every change in 30 years. What makes this different? No offense, but traditional methods don't work anymore. He paused, searching for diplomatic phrasing. Old? You can say it. Established? Set in your ways. The company needs room to evolve. I placed my fork down deliberately, the small clink against china marking a shift in the conversation. My will is clear. After I'm gone, everything passes to Catherine, managed by you. Until then, I run this company. Wesley leaned forward, invading the space across the table. His voice dropped lower, harder. That's not good enough. We need control now. Need or want? His jaw clenched. The careful mask he'd been wearing cracked slightly. You're making a mistake. Holding on too tight breaks things. I maintained steady eye contact. Are you threatening me, Wesley? Before he could answer, Catherine spoke up. Dad, you're being unreasonable. We're family. Why can't you trust us? Something twisted in my chest, but I kept my voice level. Trust is earned through actions, not demanded through blood. You've never believed in me. Her fingers twisted her wedding ring round and round. Never thought I was capable. I gave you a position. You chose to use it against me. She stood abruptly, her chair scraping backward. Wesley rose with her, towering over me for a moment in what I recognized as a calculated power display. Wesley's right, Catherine said, her voice tight. You'll regret pushing us away. They gathered their things, Wesley slapping his folder against the table with more force than necessary, and left. Catherine hesitated at the door, glancing back once. Whatever guilt flickered across her face vanished quickly when Wesley called her name from the hallway. I sat alone at the table. My coffee had gone cold. Through the windows the city sprawled beneath us, indifferent to the small drama playing out on the 15th floor. An ambulance siren wailed somewhere far below, fading into the general noise. 30 years building something real, and they wanted it handed over like car keys. Back in my office, I locked the door, something I rarely did. The click of the deadbolt felt significant, permanent. I pulled open the bottom drawer of my desk, the one that required a key I kept on a chain. Inside were corporate financial records, expense reports, vendor contracts. I spread the latest expense reports across the mahogany surface. My finger traced a line of transactions marked with Wesley's approval signature. Med Supply Solutions. Amounts ranging from $3,000 to $8,000, recurring monthly. I pulled out my vendor contracts, flipping through until I found the medical equipment suppliers we'd used for years. Med Supply Solutions wasn't listed. The numbers didn't align with any contract I'd authorized. Small enough amounts to slip past cursory review, large enough to add up over time. I sat back in my chair, the leather creaking. That conversation I'd overheard wasn't casual complaining. It was scheming. Accelerate the timeline. Legal options. What exactly had they been planning before I interrupted? I thought I knew my daughter. I thought I'd trained Wesley well, brought him into the business, given him opportunities. I'd been wrong about both of them. My hand rested on a folder embossed with the Ellis Healthcare Group logo, my creation built from nothing over 3 decades. The winter light was fading now, casting long shadows across the office. I looked at the framed photographs on my wall. Ribbon-cutting ceremonies, community awards, medical conferences. Wesley had waved dismissively at those photos during a meeting last month. At the time, I thought he was just being careless. Now I understood it was contempt. I pulled my phone from my pocket and photographed the expense reports, each page clearly showing Wesley's signature. Then I returned everything to the drawer and locked it again. Through my office window, I could see the lights of Manhattan, flickering to life as darkness settled over the city. Somewhere in this building, Wesley and Catherine were probably celebrating what they thought was my weakness, my sentimentality, my unwillingness to see what they were really doing. They wanted the company. Fine. I spoke aloud to the empty office, my voice steady and cold. You want the company? Let's see if you can handle what comes next. I opened my laptop and created a new folder. Q1 Audit Prep. Innocent enough. Inside, I began documenting everything I'd noticed. Every conversation, every irregularity. If they wanted to play this game, they'd discover I'd been playing longer than they'd been alive. 3 weeks crawled past. February arrived with dirty snow piling against Manhattan curbs and a coldness that had nothing to do with weather. I'd been coming to the office earlier each morning, often arriving by 7, sometimes earlier. The townhouse on the Upper East Side, my property, my name on the deed, had become uncomfortable. Wesley and Catherine lived there too, an arrangement that had seemed practical when I'd offered it 2 years ago. Now it felt like enemy territory. I kept my distance, let them think I was retreating, let them believe I was just an old man clinging to past glories, too stubborn to recognize reality. Meanwhile, I documented everything. On a gray Tuesday morning in early February, I pushed through the revolving doors of the Ellis Healthcare Group headquarters at 6:45. The lobby was empty except for security. I rode the elevator to 12, expecting the usual silence of an office not yet awake. Instead, lights blazed in the main conference room. Through the glass walls, I saw Wesley standing at the head of the table, my usual position, addressing 3 of our clinic directors. Sandra Chen wasn't among them, notable since she'd been my most trusted operational manager for a decade. I didn't hesitate. I walked straight into the conference room. The conversation died mid-sentence. Wesley's expression flickered, surprise, then annoyance, then that smooth professional mask he wore so well. Morning meeting? I kept my tone neutral, almost pleasant. Initiative I'm leading, Wesley said. He didn't move from the head of the table. Didn't want to bother you with details. The 3 clinic directors looked uncomfortable. Marcus Washington, who'd been with me since the beginning, stared at his notepad. Any meeting involving my clinic directors requires my approval. I let each word land clearly. We're just discussing operational improvements, nothing that affects strategy. I turned to the directors. I'll expect full notes on my desk within the hour. They nodded, avoiding Wesley's glare. I left without another word, but I'd made my point. Whatever Wesley had told them about upcoming organizational changes, and new reporting structure, they now understood I wasn't going anywhere. That evening, I returned to the townhouse later than usual. Catherine's coat hung in the hallway, but when I called out, she didn't answer. I found a note on the kitchen counter in her handwriting. Working late, don't wait up. She was home. I'd seen her silhouette pass across the upstairs hallway window. I climbed the stairs to my private study, the room I'd used for decades, filled with medical journals and family photographs from better times. The door was open. Wesley sat at my desk, papers spread across the surface, using my space without permission. "That's my desk, Wesley." He didn't look up immediately, making me wait. When he finally raised his eyes, there was no apology in them. "Just needed space to work. Thought you'd be at the office longer." "This is my home. My private office. Technically, it's the family home." He gestured vaguely at the walls. "We all live here." I felt my jaw tighten. "My name on the deed says otherwise." He gathered his papers slowly, deliberately taking his time. As he passed me in the doorway, he paused. "You should really think about what we discussed. This doesn't have to be difficult." I didn't respond. After he left, I looked at my desk. He'd rearranged items, small changes but noticeable, territorial marking like an animal claiming space. I began arriving at the office before Wesley every morning after that, started locking files in my personal safe, documents he'd previously been able to access, changed passwords on company systems, small defensive moves that added up to a fortress. Mid-February, I stayed late reviewing monthly financial reports. The office was silent except for the hum of heating vents and distant traffic. I pulled up the expense tracking system, sorting by approver. There it was again, Med Supply Solutions. Another payment, this time $7,800. I cross-referenced procurement contracts. Nothing. No authorized agreement, no competitive bid, no signed terms. But Wesley's digital signature appeared on every approval. I photographed each screen with my phone, making sure the dates and amounts were clearly visible. Then I pulled vendor registration documents. Med Supply Solutions had been added to our approved vendor list 8 months ago. The authorization, Wesley Chambers, Chief Operating Officer. I leaned back in my chair, staring at the ceiling. Small amounts designed to slip past audits. Recurring charges that looked legitimate on surface review. But when you added them up over 8 months, they totaled nearly $50,000 paid to a company that didn't match any service we'd actually received. Whatever Wesley was planning, he needed money, and he was stealing it from the company he wanted to inherit. 2 days later, I received a call from Gerald Thompson, our largest insurance partner. We'd worked together for 15 years, built a strong relationship through consistent performance and mutual respect. "Lemuel, good to hear your voice. I wanted to follow up on our conversation last week." I frowned. "We didn't speak last week, Gerald." Pause. "Oh," Wesley said. "He mentioned you'd be stepping back soon. Wanted to make sure I understood the transition plan." My hand tightened on the phone. "There are no transitions planned." Wesley spoke without authority. "That's awkward." He seemed quite certain about the timeline. "I'll address this internally. Our partnership remains unchanged." After we hung up, I sat staring at my office wall. Wesley wasn't just undermining me privately anymore. He was actively telling our partners I was leaving, creating the narrative before reality had a chance to interfere. I found him in his office an hour later. He was on his cell phone, laughing at something the person on the other end said. When he saw me in the doorway, his expression shifted to professional neutrality. "I'll call you back," he said into the phone. Then to me, "Something wrong?" "You told Thompson I'm retiring." "I'm not." He shrugged, entirely unrepentant. "I said transitions eventually happen." He asked about succession planning. I answered honestly. "Honestly, you implied it's imminent. You can't run this forever, Lemuel. Stakeholders need assurance there's a plan. The plan is you inherit when I die, not before. Stop creating confusion. Maybe you should consider making it sooner rather than later." His voice had that edge now, the smooth veneer cracking. "For everyone's sake." I left before saying something I'd regret. The office felt different now. Other employees had started noticing the tension. Conversations stopped when I entered rooms. The atmosphere had soured, poisoned by whatever narrative Wesley was spreading. Late February brought another confrontation. I'd been working until 9 most evenings, deliberately avoiding the townhouse. When I finally returned that Thursday night, Wesley was waiting in the living room. Not reading, not watching television, just sitting in the armchair by the window, clearly waiting for me. "We need to talk about your role in the company." I hung my coat slowly, buying time to control my response. "I'm not interested in this conversation again." "You're becoming a burden." He stood, blocking my path to the stairs. "Operations are suffering because you won't delegate." Delegate or surrender? Call it what you want. Maybe it's time to rest. Enjoy retirement. Travel. Whatever people do when they stop working. I met his eyes directly. "That sounds less like advice and more like a push. Take it however you want." His voice dropped lower, almost threatening. "Things are going to change, one way or another." Catherine appeared in the hallway then, drawn by our raised voices. She stood beside Wesley, not between us. Her silence spoke volumes. I looked at my daughter, really looked at her, saw how she'd positioned herself, physically and metaphorically, saw how she wouldn't meet my eyes, saw how her hand rested on Wesley's arm, a gesture of alliance. "I'm sleeping at the office tonight," I said. "Don't wait up." I grabbed my keys and walked out, leaving them standing together in the living room of my house. The office couch wasn't comfortable, but I'd slept in worse places. I lay there in the darkness, city lights filtering through the blinds, thinking about everything that had happened since that overheard conversation in January. This wasn't about business disagreements anymore. Wesley wasn't just impatient or ambitious. He was planning something, and those financial irregularities were part of it. My daughter, who I'd raised and loved and given every opportunity, was watching her husband threaten me and saying nothing. I'd built this company for family. Now family was trying to steal it. My phone buzzed on the desk. Wesley's name appeared on the screen. I almost didn't answer, but curiosity won. "Urgent meeting tomorrow with potential investors," he said without preamble. "Need you there? 9 a.m. "Which investors?" "I'll brief you tomorrow." "Oh, and your car's in the shop, right? Engine trouble you mentioned last week?" I hadn't mentioned car trouble. "It's fine. Might be faster to take the subway anyway. Morning traffic's terrible this time of year. Green line to 42nd should put you right there." Something in his voice made my instincts flare. Too casual, too specific about the route. "I'll be there," I said slowly. "Great. See you tomorrow." The call ended. I stared at my phone in the darkness, Wesley's words echoing. Why had he assumed my car was broken? Why suggest the subway so specifically? Whatever they were planning, I needed to be 3 steps ahead. But lying there on that uncomfortable couch, I couldn't shake the feeling that tomorrow morning, something was going to shift. Some line would be crossed, some point of no return reached. I was right to be suspicious. I just didn't know yet how right. I'd been living in the converted office space for a week when the call came. 8:45 on a Wednesday morning in early March, and I was surrounded by financial documents spread across a folding table that served as both desk and dining surface. The apartment was temporary, impersonal, just a place to sleep while I figured out my next move away from the townhouse that no longer felt like home. Wesley's name flashed on my phone screen. I almost didn't answer. "We have a serious problem." His voice carried manufactured urgency. "United Healthcare is pulling out." I set down my coffee carefully. "What?" "We just renewed that contract in January. Their risk assessment team found issues. They're at the office now, demanding to speak with you personally." "What kind of issues?" "Compliance concerns, operational questions. I don't have details. They want the owner. Nobody else will do." He paused. "Will you come or not?" Every instinct told me this was wrong, but the scenario was plausible enough to investigate. United Healthcare represented 30% of our revenue. If they were genuinely threatening to terminate, "I'll drive. Be there in 20 minutes. You haven't checked traffic. FDR's completely blocked. Overturned semi near 96th Street. I pulled up the traffic app on my phone. He was right. A solid red line stretched along the highway. How do you know that? "I just tried leaving for a meeting. Turn back. It's a nightmare. We'll never make it by car. Alternative routes? Will take 40 minutes minimum. We don't have 40 minutes. Take the subway. Lexington line goes straight to the office." The logic was sound. I hated being maneuvered, but time mattered if this crisis was real. "Where should we meet?" "Lexington Avenue, 63rd Street Station. I'll be there in 10 minutes. I grabbed my jacket and left, locking the door twice out of habit. The walk to the subway took 5 minutes. Wesley was already waiting at the top of the stairs, hands buried in his coat pockets, shifting his weight foot to foot. "Beautiful morning for March," he said as I approached. "Almost feels like spring." I didn't respond to the small talk. We descended into the station together, swiped our Metro cards, and moved toward the downtown platform. Mid-morning meant fewer people than rush hour, maybe 8 passengers scattered along the platform's length. Wesley kept up a stream of conversation about investor concerns and contract terms, but I was watching his face more than listening to his words. He was blinking too much. His hand kept moving to his jacket pocket and away again. The smile he wore looked rehearsed. We walked toward the middle of the platform, away from other waiting passengers. Wesley guided us with subtle touches to my elbow, positioning us near the yellow warning strip at the edge. The digital sign updated. "Next train, 2 minutes." "Is Sandra confirming these investors are legitimate?" I asked. "Of course. She's with them now. They brought documentation." "What are their names? I want to know who I'm meeting." He paused just for a heartbeat. Henderson and I think Martinez. Sandra has the details." "You didn't get their names?" "It happened fast. She's handling protocol." A distant rumble echoed from the tunnel. I looked down the dark throat of the subway, seeing the first glow of approaching headlights. Wesley went quiet, checking his phone again. When I glanced at him, his expression had changed subtly, less animated, more focused. The platform began to vibrate. Wind pushed through the tunnel ahead of the train, stirring trash and debris across the concrete. Other passengers instinctively stepped back from the edge. Wesley stepped closer, positioning himself slightly behind and to my right. "Where exactly in the building are they waiting?" I asked, turning slightly toward him. "Conference room B. The large one." "We don't have a conference room B." He caught himself. "Sorry, the large conference room." "You know which one." The train's headlight brightened, the roar growing louder. I turned to face Wesley directly, and what I saw in his expression stopped my breath. No warmth, no concern, just cold calculation like he was solving an equation. "What's really happening here?" He didn't answer. His hands came out of his pockets, empty palms facing me. The train was close now, maybe 15 feet away and closing fast. Time seemed to stretch and compress simultaneously. I saw everything with perfect clarity. Wesley's weight shifting onto his front foot, his arms beginning to extend, the determination in his eyes. Then his palms struck my back between my shoulder blades. Hard, violent, full body weight behind the shove. I pitched forward, arms windmilling uselessly for balance. The platform edge disappeared beneath my feet. 4 feet of empty air, then the trackbed rushing up to meet me. My knees hit first, pain registering but feeling distant. Then my hands slammed into gravel and concrete. The train's horn blared, deafening. Its headlight filled my vision blindingly bright. Through the glare, I could see the engineer's face in the window, frozen in horror. No time to climb. No time to roll aside. The third rail glinted to my left. Instant death, if touched. Pure instinct took over. I dropped completely flat between the 2 running rails, pressing my face into the gravel. Arms pinned tight to my sides. Legs straight. Every muscle locked, rigid. I sucked in one last breath and held it. The train's front passed over me, inches from my back. Then darkness. Complete, absolute darkness, filled with mechanical roar so loud it erased thought. Each car passing marked a rhythm. Thud, 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 thud. 8 cars, though I didn't count consciously. Just survival. Just the endless mental loop. Don't move, don't move, don't move. Dust and debris pelted my face and body. Oil dripped onto my back. The vibration was so intense my internal organs felt shaken loose. Metal screamed against metal as the train's emergency brakes engaged, the smell of burning brake pads choking the air. Each second felt like hours. Under all that weight and noise and darkness, I thought, this is how I die. Crushed, because of money, because of greed. But I wasn't dying, not yet. The train was slowing, the rhythm changing, the roar decreasing. Finally, it stopped. The silence after was profound. My ears rang. My entire body shook uncontrollably. I lay there for maybe 5 seconds, maybe 50. Time had lost meaning. Then I shifted slightly, testing. Everything still worked. I opened my eyes. saw light ahead between cars, crawled forward on my belly, moving slowly because my legs felt disconnected from my brain, reached the emergency ladder between cars and pulled myself up using mostly arm strength. A transit worker reached down. I waved him off and finished climbing alone. I stood on the platform covered head to toe in black grime. My clothes were torn, oil-stained, gray with dust. Blood seeped through my torn pants at the knees. I looked like I'd crawled through a coal mine. Wesley stood frozen 20 feet away, his face showing not relief, but calculation. Behind him, Catherine burst through the crowd, breathless, her arrival timing too perfect to be coincidence. "Dad! Oh no, what? Wesley, what happened?" Her face showed shock, but her eyes showed something else entirely. Not relief. Frustration. Other passengers surrounded me, voices overlapping. "Are you okay?" "Someone call an ambulance." "I saw someone push him." "No, he fell. He just fell." I ignored them all. Walked directly toward Wesley and Catherine, my steps deliberate despite the shaking in my legs. Other passengers parted for me. I stopped 2 feet from them, close enough to see their pupils dilate, close enough to watch their masks slip for one crucial second. They'd wanted me dead, my daughter, my son-in-law. They'd planned this, coordinated timing, positioned themselves, and now they were disappointed I'd survived. A transit officer approached. "Sir, what happened? Did you fall?" I kept my eyes locked on Wesley. "I was pushed." "Pushed? By who?" Wesley stepped forward quickly. He stumbled. I tried to grab him, but couldn't reach. "He pushed me, deliberately." "That's insane." Wesley's voice took on injured innocence. "Why would I—" "He's confused, officer. The trauma—" I studied them both for a long moment. Catherine couldn't hold my gaze. Wesley held it too long, too steady, overcompensating. Around us, more officers arrived. Passengers gave statements. Someone called for paramedics. I spoke quietly, but every word landed with absolute certainty. "I'll see you in court." Then I turned and walked toward the station exit, leaving them with the officers. Behind me, Wesley called out, "Lemuel, wait! This is a misunderstanding." I didn't turn, didn't respond, just kept walking, one foot in front of the other, until I reached the stairs and climbed toward daylight and air and the rest of my life. The moment Wesley's hands struck my back, time fractured. I felt the pressure between my shoulder blades, felt my body pitch forward into empty space, felt gravity claim me with indifferent finality. No, no, no. The trackbed rushed up. My knees hit first, sending white lightning through my legs. But pain didn't matter, because the train was right there. Headlight blazing, horn screaming, metal beast, bearing down at 30 miles per hour. 10 feet away. 8, 6. Flat. Lie flat. I saw the third rail to my left, that innocent-looking bar carrying enough electricity to stop my heart instantly. Death on my left, death bearing down from above. Survival only in the 18-inch gap between the running rails. Center, stay, center. My hands hit gravel. I rolled briefly onto my back, saw the train's undercarriage, mechanical guts and grinding wheels in oil-streaked metal. Flipped back to my stomach, arms pinned to sides, legs straight. Face turned sideways against the trackbed, creating the smallest profile possible. The train's front passed over me, then darkness swallowed everything. The roar erased thought, erased identity, erased everything except the primal mantra. Don't move, don't breathe, don't exist. The undercarriage was inches from my back. I felt its heat, smelled burning oil, tasted metal, dust. Each car's passage marked itself. Thud, 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 thud. Debris pelted my face. Something wet, oil or brake fluid, dripped onto my neck. The vibration rattled my teeth, shook my organs, seemed to loosen the joints of my skeleton. How many cars? How long? How much longer? My lungs burned for air, but I kept my mouth clamped shut, breathing in tiny sips through gritted teeth. My hands clutched gravel not for physical stability, but for psychological anchor. Something real. Something that proved I still existed. The train was breaking. I felt it through the rails pressed against my sides, metal screaming against metal, the smell of burning brake pads mixing with oil and dust and my own sweat. The rhythm changed. The roar decreased incrementally, then stopped. Complete silence after mechanical chaos. My ears rang so loudly the silence seemed louder than the train had been. I lay frozen, afraid that moving would somehow restart everything, that the train would surge forward and crush me after all. Test the body, one limb at a time. Fingers curled, toes flexed, arms shifted, legs bent slightly at the knees. Everything still worked. I was whole. I was alive. My son-in-law tried to kill me. I opened my eyes. Ahead, maybe 15 feet, I saw light between cars. I crawled toward it on my belly, pulling myself forward with my elbows because my legs had turned to water. The distance felt infinite. Finally, I reached the emergency ladder and grabbed the lowest rung. "Don't move! Stay there! We're coming!" A transit worker's voice from above. "I'm coming to you!" My voice came out hoarse, scraped raw. I pulled myself up using mostly arm strength. My legs shook so badly they could barely support weight. Hand over hand, rung by rung, I climbed back to the platform. The transit worker reached to help. I waved him off and finished alone, hauling myself over the edge and standing on legs that trembled like a newborn calf's. The platform was chaos. Passengers clustered in knots, voices overlapping. "Did you see?" "Someone pushed him." "No, he fell." "Call an ambulance." I stood there, brushing ineffectually at my clothes, leaving black streaks on my hands. My business suit was destroyed, torn at knees and elbows, soaked with oil and track grime. My face felt caked with dust. When I touched my cheek, my fingers came away black. Then I saw Wesley. He stood 20 feet away, frozen in place, his face a mask of false concern that didn't reach his eyes. Our gazes locked. For one unguarded second, I saw through him completely. Not worry, not relief, calculation. He was already building his story, already preparing his defense. "Dad!" Catherine burst through the crowd, her coat flying open, hair disheveled. She grabbed my arm. I pulled away sharply. Her arrival was too convenient. She was supposed to be at the office, or home, or anywhere but here. Yet here she stood, breathless at the exact moment to play concerned daughter. "Oh my, what happened? Wesley, what happened?" The performance was skilled. Her voice pitched perfectly between shock and concern, but her eyes betrayed her. When she looked at me, truly looked at me, before remembering to school her expression, I saw frustration, not relief. They'd wanted me dead. The realization crystallized with perfect clarity. This wasn't a sudden impulse by Wesley, a moment of rage. This was planned, coordinated. The urgent meeting fabrication, the traffic report he'd waited for, the specific platform position, Catherine's timed arrival to witness the tragic accident. A transit officer pushed through the crowd. "Sir, are you injured? What happened?" I kept my eyes on Wesley. I was pushed. Pushed? By who? Wesley moved quickly, his voice taking on wounded innocence. He stumbled. I tried to grab him, but couldn't reach. The train was coming so fast. He pushed me. My voice was steady, despite the adrenaline still flooding my system. Deliberately. "That's insane." Wesley spread his hands in helpless confusion. "Why would I—" "Officer, he's confused. The trauma of what just happened," Catherine joined in. "Daddy, please, you need medical attention. You're in shock." "You're here," I said to her. "How convenient." "I was coming to meet you both. I just got here. I saw—" She reached toward me again. Perfect timing. More officers arrived. Passengers offered contradictory accounts. I saw someone behind him. No, he was alone. I think he lost his balance. Someone definitely pushed. The platform cameras had been experiencing intermittent issues. Wesley had probably arranged that too. Through all the chaos, I stood perfectly still, studying the two people I'd loved most in the world. My daughter, who'd chosen money over blood. My son-in-law, who'd just tried to murder me in broad daylight. They stood together, physically close, united, against me. The transformation that had been building since January reached completion in that moment. Not father, not boss, not victim. Strategist. Hunter. Someone planning systematic destruction. I walked toward them slowly. Officers and passengers formed a circle, watching. I stopped 2 feet away, close enough to see every micro-expression on their faces. Wesley's jaw was clenched. Catherine twisted her wedding ring. Both waited for my next move. I looked at Wesley, then Catherine, then back to Wesley. Let the silence stretch until it became uncomfortable. Then I spoke, quietly enough that they had to strain to hear. "I'll see you in court." I turned and walked toward the station exit. "Lemuel, wait!" Wesley called after me. "This is a misunderstanding. We need to talk about this." I didn't turn, didn't acknowledge him, just walked with steady purpose toward the stairs, each step taking me away from the platform and toward something new, something focused, something dangerous. Behind me, I heard officers asking Wesley and Catherine to stay for additional questions, heard passengers still arguing about what they'd seen, heard the general confusion that would make a criminal case nearly impossible to prove. But criminal case wasn't what I was thinking about. I climbed the stairs to street level and emerged into cold March sunlight. My hands were shaking, not from fear, but from rage being contained. I pulled out my phone, scrolled through contacts until I found the name I needed. Gerald Morrison, attorney. My finger hovered over the call button. This was the decision point. Call the attorney, and everything changed. This became war. Total war. I pressed call. 3 rings, then, "Gerald Morrison." "Gerald, it's Lemuel Ellis. I need to see you immediately. My son-in-law just tried to kill me, and I'm going to destroy him." Silence on the line. Then, "Come to my office. I'll clear my afternoon." I hung up and started walking. My knees hurt. My back ached. I was covered in filth and probably looked deranged. But my mind had never been clearer. They wanted the company. They'd wanted me dead for it. Now I'd show them what it meant to fail at murder while revealing your true intentions. The emergency clinic took 40 minutes. A nurse cleaned the scrapes on my knees and temple, applied bandages, checked for concussion. The doctor asked how I'd gotten track debris in my hair. I told him the truth. He looked at me like I'd survived something impossible. "You're lucky to be alive." "I know." By early afternoon, I sat across from Gerald Morrison in his Midtown office. My ruined suit had been replaced with clothes I kept in my gym locker, wrinkled but clean. Gerald's desk was covered with police reports and witness statements. "I'll be direct." He slid the first document toward me. "The criminal case is weak, very weak." I picked up the police report. Platform cameras had experienced technical failure during the precise window of the incident. 6 witnesses present, 6 different stories. 3 saw me stumble. 2 thought they saw a possible push. 1 saw nothing at all. "The cameras failed at exactly the right moment," I said. "That's not coincidence." "I agree. But proving tampering?" Gerald shook his head. "Nearly impossible. And without video evidence, Wesley's lawyer will destroy this in court. He'll say you became dizzy from stress, that he tried to grab you but missed. So he walks away, after trying to murder me. Criminally? Probably." Gerald leaned back in his chair. "But there are other ways to seek justice." I looked at him carefully. "Which is?" "You mentioned suspicions about financial irregularities. Those leave trails. Paper doesn't lie like witnesses do." Understanding clicked into place. "Go after him for fraud instead of attempted murder." "Fraud, embezzlement, breach of fiduciary duty. Much easier to prove, much harder to defend." He pulled out a legal pad. "And it destroys him financially, not just criminally. I need evidence, documentation, transaction records. You're the owner. You have legal access to everything." Gerald leaned forward. "But you need him comfortable, not suspicious. Play the forgiving father. Let him think you're letting it go." The thought made my stomach turn, but the strategy was sound. "How long will this take?" "Weeks. Maybe a month to gather everything, hire forensic accountants, build an airtight case." He met my eyes. "Can you do it? Live under the same roof as someone who tried to kill you?" I thought about lying between those subway rails, about the train passing inches over my back, about emerging to see disappointment on my daughter's face instead of relief. "Yes," I said, "I can do it." That evening I returned to the townhouse. My hands shook as I turned the key, but my expression remained neutral. Wesley and Catherine sat in the living room. They looked startled when I walked in. "You're back," Wesley said carefully. I set my briefcase down and sat in my usual armchair, reclaiming territory. "I've had time to think about what happened, about us." Catherine leaned forward. "And? Life's too short for family conflict. Maybe I did stumble. The stress lately, not sleeping well." The words tasted like poison, but I delivered them steadily. My attorney advised against pressing charges. Uncertain outcome tears family apart, regardless. So you're saying what exactly? Wesley's voice held suspicion. I'm saying we move forward. Put this behind us. I don't want to lose my daughter over an accident. Catherine started crying. She crossed the room and hugged me. I endured it briefly, then stepped back, maintaining distance. Wesley watched me with calculating eyes, trying to determine if this was genuine. Just like that? You forgive everything? I met his gaze steadily. I didn't say that. I said we move forward. Over the next 2 weeks, I worked from my home office late into the night. At 2 in the morning, the house was silent except for the hum of my computer. I pulled up 5 years of financial records, scrolling through expense reports and vendor payments. There it was, Med Supply Solutions, recurring payments every month, amounts ranging from $3,000 to $8,000. I opened our vendor contracts folder. No agreement with any company by that name. I looked up the business registration, formed in Delaware in 2021, address listed as a UPS store in Newark, opened the banking portal and traced wire transfers. The destination account was in the Cayman Islands. The account holder name included Wesley's mother's maiden name, Harrington. Amateur mistake. A floorboard creaked outside my office. I minimized the windows quickly. Wesley appeared in the doorway, hair disheveled. Working late? Couldn't sleep. I gestured at the screen displaying harmless quarterly reports. Going over numbers. Why now? You never cared about details before. Nearly dying changes perspective. Makes you want things organized. He stepped into the room, eyes scanning my desk. You're looking for something. Should I be? He paused, then shook his head. Of course not. Just seems odd, the timing. Go back to bed, Wesley. This doesn't concern you. He left, muttering, Everything in this company concerns me. I waited until his footsteps faded, then opened the files again. I spent the rest of the night documenting everything, taking photos with my phone, creating an external hard drive labeled Estate Planning Docs to avoid suspicion. By morning, I had 42 months of fraudulent payments, totaling $340,000. The next day, I contacted Brennan and Associates, forensic accountants. I met with Jennifer Brennan in a conference room downtown, sliding a USB drive across the table. Complete financial records, 5 years. I need comprehensive review of all expenses over $1,000. She nodded, professional and efficient. Preparing for acquisition due diligence? Something like that. Pay particular attention to vendor payments. Understanding passed between us without words. She knew what to look for. At breakfast the following morning, I made the announcement. I've hired Brennan and Associates, forensic accountants. Wesley's coffee mug paused mid-air. Why? What for? Routine audit. Should have been doing them annually anyway. Catherine frowned. Is this because of what happened? You don't trust us? It's because I almost died and realized I've been sloppy with compliance. Nothing personal. What exactly will they be auditing? Wesley's voice was carefully casual, but I saw his hand shake slightly. Everything. 5 years of transactions, vendor relationships, expense approvals. I met his eyes. I'll need you to provide full access to your approval records. Of course, happy to cooperate. 3 weeks later, late April sliding into May, I sat alone in my car near the office. My phone rang. Jennifer Brennan. Mr. Ellis, we need to meet. Today, I found something. I looked at my reflection in the rearview mirror. For the first time since the subway, I smiled. Not a large smile, just a slight curve of satisfaction. I'll be there in 20 minutes. I started the car and pulled into traffic. The evidence I needed was ready. Phase 1 was complete. The conference room on the 12th floor felt different now. This was where I'd overheard Wesley and Catherine scheming back in January, where everything had started. 4 months later, I sat at the head of the table in the same room, about to end everything they'd planned for. 9 o'clock Tuesday morning, early May, bright sunlight through the windows. Sandra Chen sat to my right. She'd been briefed. Robert Park and Margaret Foster flanked the opposite side, both understanding what was coming. Wesley and Catherine sat across from me, still believing this was a routine quarterly board review. I distributed bound documents to each person. The cover page read, Confidential Restructuring Proposal. Wesley's expression shifted from boredom to sharp attention as he read the title. Beside him, Catherine flipped to the index, confusion spreading across her face. I've made decisions about the company's future structure. My voice was formal, cold. Business announcement, not family discussion. Let me finish before questions. Wesley started to interrupt. I held up one hand. He closed his mouth, jaw clenched. Effective immediately, I formed a new entity, Ellis Medical Solutions, LLC. 4 clinics will transfer to this new company: Upper East Side, Midtown, Financial District, and Brooklyn Heights. I turned to page 3. These locations represent approximately 65% of total revenue. I watched Wesley's face darken as he processed the implications. Major insurance contracts will move to Ellis Medical Solutions. United Healthcare, Aetna, Blue Cross. Sandra Chen will serve as Chief Operating Officer of the new entity. Sandra nodded once, confirming. The original company, Ellis Healthcare Group, will retain 4 locations and existing vendor relationships. Wesley and Catherine, your positions remain with Ellis Healthcare Group. Wesley stood so fast his chair tipped backward, clattering against the floor. You can't do this. This is sabotage. Illegal asset stripping. It's completely legal. Robert Park slid a document across the table. Legal opinion attached. Mr. Ellis owns 100% of company equity. He has absolute right to restructure. I'll sue. Injunction against asset transfer. Emergency board vote. Margaret Foster interrupted calmly. The board is advisory only. No voting power. This restructuring is entirely within ownership rights. Wesley's face flushed dark red. He leaned over the table, jabbing his finger at the documents. That company was promised to us. Your will governs inheritance after death. I'm alive. I remained seated, hands flat on the table. I can restructure as I wish. Catherine started crying. She reached across the table, trying to grasp my hand. I pulled back, maintaining physical distance. Daddy, please, don't do this to us. We're family. Family tried to kill me, remember? That was an accident. You said you forgave us. I said we'd move forward. This is moving forward. Separately. Wesley pounded his fist on the table, making water glasses jump. There's nothing left. Those clinics barely break even. Then you'll need to manage efficiently. I checked my watch. Dismissive. Good practice. How are we supposed to survive on that? Catherine's voice rose, tears streaming. I met her eyes directly. The same way I survived lying between subway rails. Figure it out. Wesley grabbed the documents and stormed out, Catherine following. The door slammed hard enough to rattle the frame. Sandra exhaled slowly. That took courage. It took math. Numbers don't lie about who's been stealing. I gathered my materials. We'll finalize transfer logistics this afternoon. I want everything operational within 2 weeks. That evening, I returned to the townhouse for the last time as a resident. I moved through rooms methodically, packing only what belonged solely to me. Clothes from my closet, leaving Catherine's things untouched. Documents from the safe. Photos of young Catherine before Wesley, leaving wedding pictures where they hung. Wesley found me in the master bedroom, suitcase open on the bed. You're kicking us out? Your own daughter? I folded a shirt precisely. My house. My decision. 30 days is legally required notice. I handed him an envelope. He ripped it open, read the eviction notice. Where are we supposed to go? Not my concern. Find an apartment. Use your salary from Ellis Healthcare Group. What salary? Without those contracts, there's no revenue for payroll. I placed the eviction notice on the dresser. Then cut expenses. Prioritize. Basic management. Catherine appeared in the doorway. I can't believe you're doing this. I didn't look up from packing. I can't believe you stood on that platform and smiled while I almost died. She had no response to that. They both watched as I carried boxes downstairs and loaded them into my car trunk. I took my house keys off the keyring and placed them on the kitchen counter. Wesley blocked the doorway briefly. I walked past without breaking stride. The apartment in Murray Hill was sparse. 3 flights up, 1 bedroom. Unfurnished except for a single chair I'd bought that morning. I carried boxes up the stairs alone, setting them in neat rows along the wall. I opened the blinds. Different view than the townhouse. No garden, no privacy, but unobstructed. Honest. I sat in the chair eating takeout dinner while my phone buzzed repeatedly with calls and texts from Wesley. I ignored them all. The apartment echoed when I walked. Empty space felt cleaner than filled rooms contaminated by betrayal. 10 days passed. The new company operated smoothly. Sandra ran daily operations while I focused on strategic planning. The old company struggled, exactly as intended. Wesley made desperate calls to vendors, trying to negotiate better terms with no leverage. Catherine worked late trying to balance budgets that wouldn't balance. I was in my new office reviewing financial projections with Sandra when my assistant knocked. "Mr. Ellis, there's a process server here. Legal documents for you." The envelope was thick. I opened it standing in the doorway. Wesley and Catherine had filed lawsuit challenging the restructuring, seeking injunction, claiming breach of fiduciary duty and elder abuse. 15 pages of allegations arguing I was mentally incompetent, acting maliciously, violating implied promises. I read the entire complaint without sitting down. When I finished, I looked at Sandra. They're fighting back. "What do we do?" I allowed myself a slight smile. The first genuine one in weeks. "We counterattack. Get Morrison on the phone." She reached for her cell immediately. I walked to the window, looking out at Manhattan stretching in all directions. Wesley thought this was about the company, about money and control and inheritance. He still didn't understand. This wasn't about business. This was about accountability, about making sure people who try to murder you for profit lose everything they wanted from your death. The lawsuit was expected, even welcome. It opened the door for discovery, for depositions, for putting everything on public record. They'd filed first, thinking aggression would intimidate me. They'd just made a serious mistake. Morrison's voice came through the speakerphone. "I heard. They're going nuclear." "Good," I said. "That makes phase 2 easier. Time to show them what we found in the audit." Morrison spread the lawsuit across his conference table. 47 pages of accusations, each more absurd than the last. I sat across from him reading sections, occasionally shaking my head. "They're claiming you made oral promises to transfer the business." Morrison highlighted a passage with yellow marker. "Can they prove it?" "No, because I never promised immediate transfer, only inheritance after death." "The competency angle is more concerning." He flipped to page 32. "They're requesting court-ordered psychological evaluation, citing erratic behavior post-trauma." I looked up sharply. "Based on what?" "The subway incident. Your document gathering afterward, which they're calling paranoid. The restructuring, which they're calling impulsive revenge." He met my eyes. "It's desperate tactics, but a judge might grant evaluation just to be thorough. I'll take their tests, pass everyone. That's the plan. But it means weeks of appointments, multiple doctors, legal costs mounting while we wait for results." He pulled out a calculator. "Volkman and Associates bills aggressively. Figure $40,000 monthly just defending against their motions." The number didn't shock me. I'd expected financial warfare. "Bill me. I'm not settling." "Emergency hearing in 1 week. They're requesting immediate injunction to halt all business operations pending trial." I leaned back in my chair. "They won't get it. I own the company. No shareholders to protect." "Agreed. But we have to show up, argue, respond to every motion they file. Each appearance costs $8,000 to $15,000. Morrison closed the document. "They're counting on financial pressure forcing negotiation." "Let them count." The following week brought the first court appearance. I sat at one table, Wesley and Catherine at another 20 feet away. We didn't speak, didn't acknowledge each other beyond cold assessment when the judge entered. Wesley's attorney argued I was destroying company value through malicious restructuring. Morrison countered that ownership rights were absolute. No shareholders existed to harm. The judge reviewed documents for 20 minutes, then struck his gavel. Motion for injunction denied. Plaintiff has not demonstrated likelihood of success on merits. Next hearing, July 8th. Small victory, but victories cost money. That hearing alone, $12,000 in legal fees. The court did grant one request, comprehensive psychological evaluation, 3 appointments scheduled over 2 weeks, cognitive testing, psychiatric interview, neurological examination, Dr. Patricia Hoffman's office, first appointment. I sat at a computer clicking through pattern recognition puzzles, reciting number sequences backward, solving logic problems. The tests were straightforward, almost insultingly simple. "Excellent cognitive function," Dr. Hoffman noted. "No signs of impairment." The psychiatric evaluation proved equally pointless. Dr. Ramirez asked about the subway incident, about my business decisions, about family relationships. How did nearly dying affect your mental state? It clarified my priorities, showed me who I could trust. Some might interpret your business decisions as retaliatory. Some might interpret attempted murder as motive to protect assets from criminals. He made notes without expression. Your cognitive function appears excellent. I see no signs of diminished capacity. The neurological examination completed the trilogy. Brain scans, reflex tests, coordination assessments, all normal. The court-appointed evaluators report no evidence of psychological impairment or diminished decision-making capacity. Meanwhile, Wesley was destroying what remained of the old company. Desperate to cut costs, he fired 40% of staff. Clinic hallways echoed emptily. Patient care quality plummeted. Local healthcare newsletters began running stories about the crisis. He also tried recruiting employees from Ellis Medical Solutions. Sandra Chen received his call and told him exactly where to go. Others remained loyal as well. Wesley's reputation preceded him now. Nobody wanted to work for someone under federal investigation. June became a marathon of court appearances, discovery motions, scheduling conferences, document production disputes. Wesley's attorneys demanding internal communications, trying to prove malicious intent. Morrison provided only what was legally required, nothing more. Each hearing meant another day in court, another legal bill. By month's end, I'd spent $87,000 defending against meritless claims. Late June evening, I sat alone in my office reviewing the mounting costs. Discovery requests piled on my desk, Wesley demanding hundreds of documents, each requiring attorney review time. More fees, more delays. Sandra knocked on my door. You look exhausted. When did you last take a day off? When the lawsuits stopped coming. She sat across from me, concern evident. Is this legal battle worth your health? They tried to kill me. Yes, it's worth everything. What if they win? What if the court sides with them? I pulled open my desk drawer and touched the folder inside. They won't. I have something they don't know about yet. The audit? The audit. 2 more weeks of their attacks. Then I end this. My phone buzzed. Morrison's name appeared. I answered on speaker. 3 new motions filed today. We need to discuss response strategy. Sandra stood to leave. I gestured for her to stay and pulled out my calendar. The first week of July was marked for strategy meeting. The same week the final audit report was due. Schedule it, I told Morrison, and make sure Jennifer Brennan can attend. It's time to deploy Phase 2. I hung up and looked at the folder on my desk. Inside was the preliminary audit summary. $340,000 in documented theft, shell companies, offshore transfers, Wesley's signature on every fraudulent transaction. Let them file motions. Let them attack my competency. Let them drain resources they didn't have. The counterpunch was coming. The first week of July arrived. I sat in Morrison's office for our strategy session, reviewing the status of various motions. His assistant knocked and entered carrying a thick package. The forensic audit final report just arrived by courier. I took the bound document. The cover page read, Confidential Forensic Audit, Ellis Healthcare Group, Evidence of Systematic Fraud. I opened to the executive summary. Jennifer Brennan's work was meticulous. 347 pages of evidence. Bank statements, wire transfers, email communications, shell company formation documents showing Wesley as beneficial owner, timeline spanning 38 months, total documented theft, $350 to $680, every fraudulent transaction traced and verified, every approval bearing Wesley's digital signature, every wire transfer ending in his offshore account. I looked at Morrison. How fast can we get this filed? He leaned forward, energized. Court, 24 hours, SEC and IRS. I can have it on their desks by tomorrow afternoon. I closed the report with decisive finality. Do it. All of them. Simultaneously. Morrison smiled. The first genuine smile I'd seen from him in weeks. Now we're playing offense. 48 hours after filing the audit evidence, everything changed. Morrison submitted the report as an exhibit in the civil lawsuit, immediately becoming public record. Simultaneously, copies went to the SEC Division of Enforcement and IRS Criminal Investigation Division. The evidence package was comprehensive. 347 pages of financial records, bank statements, wire transfer documentation. Shell company formation documents showing Wesley as beneficial owner. Email communications between Wesley and fictitious vendors sent by Wesley to himself, creating paper trail for fake invoices. The pattern was clear. Wesley approved invoices from MedSupply Solutions for non-existent medical equipment. Funds wired to offshore accounts. Account holder traced to Wesley's family trust. Systematic theft over 38 months totaling over $340,000. Within 72 hours, both agencies opened formal investigations. Mid-July morning, I was reviewing quarterly projections when Sandra knocked urgently. "You need to see this." She handed me her tablet showing a breaking news alert. Federal probe, NYC Medical Clinic owner, accused of $340K embezzlement. I scrolled through the article. Healthcare Business Journal had obtained copies of the public court filing. The story detailed everything: the audit findings, the shell companies, Wesley's systematic fraud, quotes from sources close to the investigation, likely prosecutors building public case. "The media found it fast," Sandra observed. "Good. Let everyone see what he is." My phone buzzed. Morrison calling. "Federal agents are at Ellis Healthcare Group right now. SEC investigator Marcus Chen and IRS criminal investigation agent Rebecca Torres. They're seizing records." I stood, walking to my window. Across town, Wesley's world was collapsing. At the old company office, Wesley sat at his desk, reviewing termination paperwork, when the lobby receptionist called. "There are federal agents here to see you." Before he could respond, his office door opened. Marcus Chen and Rebecca Torres entered, showing credentials. "Mr. Wesley Chambers?" Chen extended a subpoena. "We need immediate access to all financial records, computers, and communications." Wesley's face drained of color. "What is this about?" "Financial fraud investigation. Your office is sealed pending forensic analysis." Torres gestured to IT specialists entering behind them. "We'll need you to answer some questions." For 4 hours they questioned him. Wesley denied knowledge, claimed accounting errors, insisted he had no connection to offshore accounts. His attorney arrived mid-interview and advised him to stop talking. "We didn't mention offshore accounts," Torres noted. "How did you know about them?" Wesley realized his mistake. "I want my attorney present before answering anything else." The same day, agents visited Catherine at her apartment in Queens. She answered the door in sweatpants, face drawn from stress. Seeing the badges, her legs buckled. Torres caught her elbow, helping her to the kitchen table. They showed her documents bearing her signature, approving fraudulent expenses as CFO. "I didn't know," Catherine's voice rose to near hysteria. "Wesley said they were normal expenses. I just signed what he told me to sign." "That's a defense for trial," Chen said evenly. "Right now, you're a person of interest in a criminal investigation. Can I make a deal? Testify against him?" Torres exchanged glances with Chen. "That's not our decision. The U.S. Attorney's Office handles cooperation agreements, but you should retain counsel immediately." 2 days later, Wesley tried using an ATM. Transaction denied. He called his bank, on hold for 15 minutes. "Mr. Chambers, your account has been frozen pending federal investigation." He checked his phone banking app. All accounts showing zero available balance. The offshore Cayman account, also frozen through international law enforcement coordination. Total accessible assets, nothing. His credit cards were maxed from civil litigation costs. He couldn't pay rent, couldn't pay his criminal defense attorney's retainer. Catherine faced identical financial paralysis, her accounts frozen, her signature on fraudulent documents, making her a potential co-conspirator. The media firestorm intensified. New York Post ran, "Healthcare heir, accused of bilking father's business." The articles detailed everything: the subway incident, the restructuring battle, the fraud discovery. Professional networks discussed the scandal endlessly. Insurance partners began distancing themselves from Ellis Healthcare Group. Wesley's professional reputation was destroyed overnight. A Google search of his name returned nothing but scandal coverage. Volkman, Weslow's civil attorney, contacted Morrison seeking settlement. A conference call was arranged. All parties, all attorneys. "My clients want to discuss resolution," Volkman began. "They're prepared to withdraw all litigation, resign from company positions, surrender future inheritance claims." Morrison presented the proposal to me. I rejected it immediately. "No deal. Criminal prosecution continues regardless. Mr. Ellis, Volkman's voice carried desperation. My clients could face significant prison time. Surely some mercy. I had mercy lying between subway rails. My voice was flat, emotionless. None left. Wesley's voice came through the speaker. Lemuel, please. I made mistakes. But prison? For accounting errors? Accounting errors? You stole $340,000. You tried to kill me. Call it what it is. Catherine started crying audibly. Daddy, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. Please help me. You stood on that platform. You smiled. No settlement. No mercy. We're done here. I disconnected. Morrison stayed on briefly to formalize the rejection, then hung up as well. They're panicking, he observed. They should be. What's the timeline on federal charges? Grand jury likely within 60 days. Prosecutors are moving fast. Your evidence made their case easy. He consulted his notes. Wire fraud, money laundering, tax evasion. Wesley's looking at 10 to 15 years, potentially. And Catherine? Depends if she cooperates. If she testifies against Wesley, she might get immunity. That's between her and prosecutors. Morrison studied me carefully. You're not troubled by the possibility of your daughter facing prison? She's an adult. She made choices. I met his gaze steadily. If she testifies truthfully, that's her decision. I won't interfere either way. That evening, my phone rang. Healthcare Business Journal reporter. Mr. Ellis, can you comment on the federal investigation of your son-in-law? I'm cooperating fully with authorities. The evidence speaks for itself. Some say this is revenge for a family dispute. This is about financial crimes. The audit uncovered systematic fraud. I reported it to appropriate authorities. No further comment. I hung up and ignored subsequent calls. Let the media draw their own conclusions from public records. Late July, I received a text from Morrison. U.S. Attorney's Office scheduled meeting tomorrow. They want to discuss your cooperation and timeline for charges. Wesley's attorney contacted them about plea negotiations. I typed back, I'll be there. No deals that include leniency. I put the phone down and looked at my calendar. A date in August was circled. Court decision on the restructuring case. Everything was converging. Criminal charges, civil case resolution, company implosion, all happening within weeks of each other. I stood and walked to the window. The city stretched out below, lights beginning to flicker on as darkness settled. Somewhere out there, Wesley and Catherine were watching their lives disintegrate. Bank accounts frozen, criminal charges imminent, professional reputations destroyed. They'd wanted to take my life and my company. Now they had nothing. And this was just the beginning. The end game was visible now, inevitable as sunrise. Everything I'd built over 30 years was being carefully dismantled and separated from the criminals who'd tried to steal it. The plan was executing perfectly. Early August morning, I sat in the courtroom waiting for Judge Whitmore to enter. Wesley and Catherine occupied the defense table 20 feet away. Wesley looked diminished. Weight loss, poor grooming, exhaustion etched into his face. Catherine sat at the far end of the table. Physical distance between them symbolic. She hadn't lived with him for 2 weeks. The bailiff called us to rise. Judge Whitmore entered, carrying a thick folder. We sat. She began distributing copies of her written opinion. 25 pages. This court has reviewed extensive evidence and legal arguments from both parties. Her voice carried through the silent room. Plaintiffs claimed defendant restructured company in breach of oral promises. Evidence supporting such promises, none. She continued methodically. Defendant possesses clear legal authority as sole owner to restructure business as he determines appropriate. Plaintiff's competency challenge. Medical evaluations show defendant functioning at superior cognitive levels. Wesley's shoulders sagged further with each sentence. This lawsuit appears motivated by anger over legitimate business decisions rather than genuine legal injury. All claims dismissed with prejudice. The gavel strike echoed sharply. Plaintiffs will reimburse defendants' legal costs, totaling $125,000. This matter is concluded. I gathered my documents methodically. No celebration, just completion. Morrison shook my hand briefly. Professional satisfaction. Wesley remained seated as the courtroom emptied, staring at the table. I walked out without looking back. 3 days later, Wesley received a call from the remaining Ellis Healthcare Group board members. Emergency meeting required. He arrived at the conference room to find 3 grim faces and a prepared resignation letter already on the table. Wesley, the board unanimously agrees your resignation is necessary, Thompson said. I haven't been charged with anything. Wesley's voice lacked conviction. Investigation doesn't mean guilt. Your presence creates liability exposure. Insurance won't cover executives under federal investigation. The argument was brief. Wesley signed. Security escorted him out, his belongings in a cardboard box. Catherine resigned the same day via email, not even entering the building. Without leadership or viable contracts, Ellis Healthcare Group revenue collapsed. Couldn't make payroll for remaining 30 employees. Landlords demanded back rent. Medical supply vendors refused deliveries. Insurance partners canceled contracts citing quality concerns. The company attorney filed Chapter 7 bankruptcy, liquidation, not reorganization. Assets sold to pay creditors, equipment, furniture, patient records transferred to other providers. News coverage ran headlines about the shuttered business, the fraud scandal, the spectacular failure. Everything I'd built over 30 years, erased within months by Wesley's mismanagement and theft. But that had been the point, hadn't it? Separate what was valuable from what was infected. Ellis Medical Solutions thrived. The old shell collapsed under its own corruption. I listed the Upper East Side townhouse through a premier agency. Property valued at $4.2 million. Sold within 3 weeks to a hedge fund executive paying cash. Wesley and Catherine received their final notice. They'd been living there without paying rent, technically squatting. The last week of August, moving day arrived. I sent a representative. I didn't need to be there personally. Movers packed items I'd selected. Wesley and Catherine hastily loaded their belongings into a rented truck, while neighbors watched from windows. The social circle that once embraced them now witnessed their humiliation. They drove to Queens. 3rd floor walk-up, 850 square feet, industrial neighborhood. Monthly rent, $2,200. The contrast was staggering. From a $4 million townhouse to a cramped apartment with windows facing a brick wall. Their financial reality was brutal. Bank accounts remained frozen. Outstanding debts. $125,000 owed to me from the court judgment, $90,000 in legal fees to their own attorneys. No income, both unemployed and unemployable in healthcare. Credit cards maxed. Catherine found temp work, making $18 hourly. Wesley applied for positions, but background checks revealed the federal investigation. Rejection after rejection. They lived on Catherine's modest income, barely covering rent and food. The American dream inverted, from privilege to poverty in 6 months. Late August, approximately 10 days before September, my phone buzzed. Text from Morrison. Wesley's plea hearing tomorrow at 10 a.m. U.S. Attorney's Office invited you to attend sentencing hearing if you want to provide victim impact statement. I typed back, I'll be there. That evening, I opened my laptop and began writing. First line. On March 12, 2025, my son-in-law pushed me onto subway tracks in an attempted murder motivated by greed. I paused, considering my words carefully. This was the final piece, the closing statement. Everything had led to this moment. I wrote for 2 hours, revising until each sentence carried precise weight. When finished, I saved the document and closed the laptop. Tomorrow, I would deliver the final judgment. Then it would truly be over. The federal courthouse on Pearl Street gleamed in late August morning light. I passed through security, took the elevator to the 15th floor, and entered the courtroom. Wesley sat at the defense table with his criminal attorney, wearing an ill-fitting suit that hung on his gaunt frame. He'd aged a decade in 6 months. Catherine sat in the back row of the gallery, separate from her husband. She didn't look at him. He didn't look at her. Judge Harrison entered. We rose, then sat. The ritual formality of the justice system. Mr. Wesley Chambers, you've entered into a plea agreement with the government. Is that correct? Yes, Your Honor. Wesley's voice barely carried. How do you plead to the charge of wire fraud? Guilty, Your Honor. And to money laundering? Guilty. The judge reviewed the pre-sentence report. Assistant U.S. Attorney Michelle Park presented the government's position, outlining Wesley's systematic theft over 3 years, the $340,000 stolen, the attempted murder when facing exposure. Wesley's attorney requested leniency, citing his client's acceptance of responsibility. Judge Harrison looked at me. Does the victim wish to make a statement? I stood and walked to the podium, placed my written statement down but didn't read from it. I'd memorized every word. Your Honor, on March 12th, Wesley pushed me onto subway tracks because I discovered his theft and refused to surrender my company. I survived by lying between the rails as the train passed overhead. My voice remained steady, clinical, no emotion, just facts. The physical trauma lasted weeks. The betrayal is permanent. He didn't just steal money, he stole from patients, employees, everyone who trusted him. Then he sued me, claiming I was mentally incompetent, trying to finish what the subway couldn't. I paused, meeting the judge's eyes. I asked the court, maximum sentence within guidelines. Make the price of greed clear. I returned to my seat. The courtroom was silent. Wesley stared at the table. Catherine cried quietly in the back row. Judge Harrison reviewed his notes and then looked at Wesley. Mr. Wesley, your crimes were calculated, systematic, and sustained over years. The attempted murder, while not charged here, demonstrates consciousness of guilt and moral bankruptcy. You betrayed family, employer, and patients who depended on quality health care. He paused, letting the words settle. Federal guidelines suggest 18 to 24 months. This court sentences you to 18 months federal incarceration, followed by 5 years supervised release. Additionally, full restitution of $340,000, plus court costs. You will surrender to Bureau of Prisons within 30 days. The gavel struck. Wesley stood shakily, his attorney guiding him out. He glanced at me as he passed. Eye contact held for 3 seconds. My expression remained impassive. He looked away first. A week later, Catherine had her own hearing. Because she'd cooperated fully and testified truthfully, she received probation. 3 years, 200 hours community service, joint restitution obligation. No prison, but a permanent criminal record. Her CFO credential worthless now. She worked retail at a Queens shopping center. Wesley entered federal prison camp in Pennsylvania, serving time separated from the wife who'd betrayed him to save herself. 3 days after Wesley's sentencing, I sat in my Ellis Medical Solutions corner office. The company was thriving, revenue exceeding the old company's peak, reputation fully restored. Sandra Chen was now partner with 25% equity. We'd built a talented team, Dr. Marcus Rivera as medical director, 5 new clinic managers, expansion plans in development. My phone rang. Caller ID, Catherine Ellis. I debated answering. Finally picked up, said nothing, just listened. Dad, please don't hang up. Her voice was broken, desperate. I need to talk to you. I remained silent. Wesley's in prison. I'm on probation. We lost everything. I'm working retail, making minimum wage. I can't pay rent next month. Mom won't help. I have nobody else. She was crying now. I know I don't deserve anything from you, but I'm begging. Please, just enough to survive. I'm your daughter. I made terrible mistakes, but I'm still your daughter. The silence stretched. Finally I spoke. You stood on that platform. You watched him push me. You smiled. I was scared. He manipulated me. You're an adult. You made choices. Now live with them. So that's it? You're just abandoning me. You abandoned me when you chose him over everything I gave you. Goodbye, Catherine. I hung up, blocked the number, returned to reviewing expansion plans. Sandra entered moments later with acquisition proposals. We discussed strategy, partnership dynamic, easy and professional. The company I'd rebuilt was stronger than what existed before. I'd eliminated the dead weight, recruited genuine professionals, established operations on merit rather than nepotism. Evening came. I stood at the window, hands in pockets, watching Manhattan's lights flicker on as darkness settled. My reflection in the glass showed an older man, alone but not lonely, carrying weight but standing straight. Behind me, Sandra organized files, loyal presence, earned trust. I turned from the window back to my desk, opened the laptop, checked my calendar, meetings, strategy sessions, clinic inspections, future plans. Late August 2025, approaching September. The deadline met, the story complete. I felt no triumph, No satisfaction in the traditional sense. Just quiet certainty that justice had been served. I'd protected what I built over 30 years and demonstrated that betrayal carries a price. Wesley would serve 15 months with good behavior, emerge with a criminal record, and decades of restitution payments ahead. Catherine would navigate probation, working minimum wage jobs, understanding finally that actions have consequences. The company thrived without them, better without them. I returned to work, planning tomorrow's agenda. The betrayal existed in the past. Justice existed in the present. The future, that was mine to shape now, without the weight of people trying to steal it. Justice restored didn't mean revenge satisfied. It meant balance returned. I'd survived an attack and responded appropriately, systematically, legally. No glorious combat. Just consequences delivered permanently. I worked late that evening, Sandra beside me, both building toward tomorrow. The city hummed outside, indifferent and vast. Inside this office, order prevailed. Trust earned rather than assumed. Loyalty proven rather than expected. That was enough. I closed my laptop as midnight approached. Stood, stretched, looked one final time at the city sprawling below. Somewhere out there, my daughter struggled with poverty and regret. My former son-in-law occupied a prison cell. My former company existed only in bankruptcy filings. I felt no joy in their suffering, but I felt no guilt either. They'd wanted my life and my company. Now they had nothing, and I had rebuilt stronger than before. I turned off the lights and left the office, locking the door behind me. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new opportunities, new work. The past was finished. Justice was served. Life continued. If you like this story, please like this video, subscribe to the channel, and share your impressions of this story in the comments. To listen to the next story, click on the box on the left. Thank you for watching.